Every individual, every human face, carries with it the mark of disappointment. Arthur Schopenhauer. Look around you. People are hurrying around, stuck in a routine they don't even know they chose. Tired faces, empty stares. Some pretend to be happy, others don't even try anymore. Deep down, they all carry a silent truth. Life has never delivered what it promised. Ever since we were little, we've been sold the illusion that there is a right path. Study, work, conquer, love, build something, leave a legacy, and then maybe you'll be happy. But happiness never really comes, does it? It appears for a moment, only to disappear soon after, leaving the same emptiness as always. Schopenhauer saw this reality without filters. For him, life is not a gift, but a burden, and suffering is not an accident along the way, it is the way. But if that's true, why do we keep running after something we'll never find? What keeps us stuck in this cycle of expectations and frustrations? The answer may be more brutal than you think. Society teaches us to ignore this anguish. We're told that we need to be positive, that we should always look on the bright side, that happiness is within our reach if we just try hard enough. But Schopenhauer believed that this search was a trap, because everything we want is born out of a lack, an absence, a hole that will never be filled. We want money because we feel we don't have enough. We want love because we fear loneliness. We want recognition because we can't bear the thought of being insignificant. But what happens when we finally get what we want? The pleasure is brief, almost ephemeral. The excitement quickly fades, and a new emptiness takes its place. And then the cycle begins again. Schopenhauer described this as the curse of desire. We live oscillating between two equally miserable states, the suffering of lack and the boredom of conquest. The world wasn't made to satisfy us. Life doesn't care about our hopes. And in the end, none of it matters, because death awaits us as the great leveler, indifferent to our suffering or achievements. If that sounds disturbing, it really is. But this isn't just an abstract philosophical theory. This vision is confirmed every day in real life. Endless wars, relentless diseases, people who spend their entire lives fighting for scraps. Suffering is the rule, and to ignore it is only to deceive oneself. And even those who have won the game of life, those who have fame, money, and everything most people dream of, are still sunk in the same emptiness. Robin Williams, Anthony Bourdain, Ernest Hemingway, people who had it all and still couldn't bear to go on. Schopenhauer wouldn't have been surprised. For him, the more you have, the more you realize that none of it really matters. But then the most uncomfortable question of all arises. If life is suffering, why do we go on? But beware! I want to make it clear that the video does not encourage negative actions, nor does it promote destructive nihilism. We are simply exploring the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most influential thinkers in history, who saw life without illusions and without filters. Our aim is not to give up on existence, but to understand it in its essence. And more than that, to find a way out. Because if everything Schopenhauer said is true, if life really is an endless cycle of frustration, then the ultimate question is there another way? Is there something Schopenhauer didn't see? If you want to find out, stay until the end. Life keeps us going with a silent promise. When you get what you want, you'll be happy. This idea pushes us forward from day one. We are taught to want. We want toys as children. We want acceptance as teenagers. We want money, love, and recognition as adults. We always believe that there is just one more thing we need to finally feel complete. But that moment never comes. Arthur Schopenhauer realized this trap before modern science proved it. For him, desire is not a blessing. It's a curse. Everything we want is born out of a lack, an emptiness that torments us. We want something because we feel we lack something. But instead of freeing us, each achievement only pushes us into a new cycle of frustration. Think about the last time you wanted something intensely. Perhaps it was an object, a relationship, a personal goal. Before you achieved it, you felt an almost uncontrollable urge, a restlessness that consumed you. But then, what happened when you finally got it? Relief came, but it was fleeting. Soon, a new desire took its place. The car of your dreams soon became just a means of transportation. The overwhelming passion cooled. The long-awaited promotion brought new demands. Desire never allows us to rest. It keeps us running without ever arriving. Schopenhauer called this the oscillation between suffering and boredom. When we don't have something, we suffer for wanting it. When we get it, we realize that it's not enough, and we fall into boredom. The whole of life is reduced to this pendulum swing. If we're looking for something, we suffer from the lack. If we get it, we suffer from dissatisfaction. There is no middle ground. Neuroscience confirms this psychological prison. Our brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pleasure, not when we have achieved something, but when we are about to achieve it. The real pleasure is not in the achievement, but in the pursuit. And when the quest is over, the pleasure disappears. The nervous system then forces us to crave something new. And so we go on, like rats in an endless experiment, always thinking that the next reward will be different. Now look around you. The whole world operates in this cycle. The consumer industry survives by exploiting our dissatisfaction. New cell phone models, new clothes, new products, always selling the idea that now you'll have what you need to be happy. But the moment you buy it, the desire has already been transferred to something else. This applies to everything. Work culture forces us to always look for a promotion, a new position, a new challenge. Because if we stop, we face the dread of emptiness. Romantic love deludes us with the idea that there is someone who will finally complete us. But even the happiest couples sooner or later discover that desire is never satisfied forever. So what's left? For Schopenhauer, life is a prison with no way out. The more we want, the more we suffer. The more we achieve, the more we realize that none of it matters. In the end, no matter what you have, emptiness always returns. But if desire is this inevitable curse, is there any way out? Schopenhauer believed so. But before we talk about that, we need to face an even crueler truth. The problem isn't just desire. The problem is that nature itself never wanted us to be happy. Wake up, work, pay bills, sleep, and repeat it all over again the next day. Life goes by like this, and one day you realize that time has slipped away. Dreams were postponed. Opportunities went unnoticed. This happens because no one ever taught you how to see the game of life the right way. But there is another path. If you want to reach the next level, you need to access new knowledge. And that's exactly what you'll find in the White Rabbit Codes. This book will open your eyes to what is really happening. You'll understand why you keep getting stuck in the same cycles, learn how to escape autopilot, and start seeing the opportunities that were always there. And finally, you'll make decisions that truly lead to the life you've always wanted. If you feel ready for this change, the link is in the pinned comment. You'll be surprised at how simple it can be to increase your prosperity. Success is a decision. The choice is yours. If desire keeps us trapped in an endless cycle of suffering, the inevitable question is, who put us in this trap? The answer is as simple as it is brutal. Nature itself. We like to believe that there is a balance in the universe, that life follows some benevolent logic, that in the end, somehow, everything makes sense. But Schopenhauer forces us to face an uncomfortable fact. Life has no purpose. It just happens. Suffering is not a mistake. Suffering is the system. From the moment we are born, we are destined to struggle. Hunger torments us, cold threatens us, illness weakens us. We grow up facing challenges we never chose. We spend our lives trying to avoid pain, seeking security, stability, and control. But this is an illusion. Pain is not an obstacle on the way. It is the path itself. Nature doesn't care. It never has. Think of an untouched forest, a verdant paradise that many would call nature's masterpiece. Now take a closer look. Inside this forest, a deer cub is taking its first steps. Its body is still fragile. Its mother is watching it attentively. But somewhere, hidden in the undergrowth, a predator has already spotted it. Within seconds, calm turns to chaos. The cub runs, but his legs aren't fast enough. The predator advances, knocks him down, and within moments, he feels the weight of sharp teeth tearing into his flesh. His life is over before it has even begun. The cub's mistake? Being born. The same thing happens in the sea. Thousands of turtles are born on the sand, instinctively running towards the water. But few make it. On the way, seagulls pick them up by the shell, throw them into the air, and swallow them alive. Hungry fish wait at the water's edge to gobble up those that make it to the ocean. For every one that survives, hundreds disappear in seconds. And there is no one to help them. There is no justice, there is no balance, only the survival of the fittest. And if we think we're above that, we're only deluding ourselves. Civilization hasn't freed us from nature's cruelty. It has only disguised it. We still compete as predators. We seek money, status, and power. Not because we want to, but because without it, we will be devoured in another way. By misery, isolation, irrelevance. Human beings can be proud of their cities, their laws, and their innovations. But deep down, our struggle is no different from that of any animal. We run after resources. We fight to secure our position. We are driven by the fear of scarcity, the terror of exclusion, the need to prove our worth to others. Nature has programmed suffering into us. Our own bodies are proof of this. Biology designed us to feel pain before pleasure. Fear will always be greater than joy. The dread of loss will always be more intense than the satisfaction of achievement. Avoiding suffering will always be more important than seeking happiness. And nature has no mercy even for the strongest. Even those who win today will sooner or later be defeated. Youth passes, health deteriorates, loved ones disappear. Time destroys everything. And in the end, we all have the same fate: death. Schopenhauer saw all this with disturbing clarity. For him, nature isn't cruel, because that would require an intention, and the universe doesn't even bother to have one. Suffering is not an error in the system, it is the system. But if nature is merciless and suffering is inevitable, why do we go on living? How do billions of people carry on as if there were a point? The answer is even more frightening, because we create comforting lies to mask this truth. It is these lies that keep us alive. I'll explain each of them now. If life is suffering, if nature doesn't care, if everything we want only imprisons us, then why do we go on? What prevents billions of people from simply giving up in the face of this reality? The answer is uncomfortable, because we don't see the truth. From the moment we are born, we are taught to believe in stories. Stories that tell us that life has a purpose, that suffering has a meaning, that there is something greater waiting for us. But what if it's all just a collective delusion? Schopenhauer believed that human beings can only endure existence because they cling to illusions. And the greater the pain, the stronger the need to believe in them. The illusion of religion is perhaps the oldest and most effective. Since the dawn of humanity, we have invented gods to protect us from the horror of reality. If life is unfair, then there must be justice after death. If we suffer now, then there is a reward waiting for us in the afterlife. If everything seems chaotic and meaningless, then there must be a hidden plan, a divine order guiding everything. Human beings need to believe that there is a greater purpose, because facing the truth, that we are just a meaningless cosmic accident, would be unbearable. But Schopenhauer saw nothing beautiful in this. For him, religion was not an answer, but an anesthetic, a way of masking despair. And when religion begins to lose its strength, other illusions come into play. The illusion of love. We are sold the idea that finding the right person will bring us happiness, that love is the meaning of life. But Schopenhauer saw it differently. For him, love is nothing more than a biological trick. We fall in love not because there is something magical about love, but because nature has programmed us to do so. Romantic desire exists solely to ensure the reproduction of the species. And like any other desire, it also condemns us to suffering. If we don't get what we want, we suffer. If we do, we soon find that the excitement wears off. Love wears out, passion fades, and what's left is the frustration of reality. What once seemed like the answer to all problems becomes just another problem. But what if someone doesn't cling to religion or love? What remains? The illusion of progress. We've been taught that humanity is evolving, that we're building a better world, that every new invention, every technological advance, every step of civilization brings us closer to a brighter future. But Schopenhauer scoffed at this idea. For him, progress doesn't free us from suffering, it just reinvents it. Do we live longer? Yes. But to spend more years fighting disease and aging. Do we have more comfort? Yes. But now we are slaves to an exhausting and empty routine. We've created the internet, conquered space, developed artificial intelligence, but we're still plagued by the same old anxieties. If progress were the answer, then the richest and most successful people in the world should be the happiest. But we know that's not the case. How many millionaire artists, famous actors, musicians adored the world over end up sinking into depression? If money, fame, and success don't fill the void, then what does? Schopenhauer believed that the truth was simple: nothing fills. And that's the biggest lie we're told, that if we just find the right thing, the right religion, the right love, the right career, we'll finally find peace. But peace never comes. Life is a no-win game, and everyone who plays it realizes that sooner or later. But what happens when someone really sees this truth? What happens when illusions are shattered? Schopenhauer called it the tragic awakening. Imagine that for an instant, everything around you stops. No noise, no distractions, nothing to occupy your mind. Just you and a solitary thought. What if none of this makes sense? This is the beginning of what Schopenhauer called the tragic awakening. The moment when the illusion dissolves and we are faced with the brutal truth. Life wasn't meant to satisfy us. There is no justice, no reward, no purpose hidden behind the scenes of existence. Everything we believe to be important, our desires, our goals, our achievements, turns out to be fragile, as if we were holding sand between our fingers. Most people avoid this confrontation. They distract themselves with work, relationships, religion, consumption, anything that keeps them busy. But sooner or later, for some, the mask falls. And when it does, there's no turning back. For Schopenhauer, this awakening can happen in various ways. It could be the death of a loved one, when we realize that nothing lasts forever. It can come when you achieve a great goal and realize that the promised happiness never arrives. Or it could be in the middle of an ordinary day, for no apparent reason, when suddenly everything loses its luster, and we find ourselves confronted with the question we always avoid. Why? Many thinkers throughout history have experienced this awakening, and not everyone has been able to bear it. Virginia Woolf, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, was tormented by the realization that everything was empty. Her works explored the fragility of the human mind and the inability to find meaning in routine. Until one day, unable to carry this weight any longer, she filled her pockets with stones and waded into the river Ouse, where she disappeared forever. Kurt Gödel, a genius of mathematics and logic, dedicated his life to seeking absolute truths. Until one day he realized that even mathematics has flaws, that there is no perfect system, that everything contains contradictions. His own knowledge became a prison. Gradually, he stopped eating, convinced that the world was rotten and that there was no point in continuing. Ernest Hemingway, one of the most brilliant writers in history, lived intensely, searching for experiences that would fill the void. He traveled the world, fought in wars, hunted in savannas, drank until he dropped. But nothing was enough. In the end, when he realized that life would offer him nothing but the repetition of boredom and pain, he picked up his shotgun and ended his story. What do all these names have in common? They saw beyond the veil of illusion, and they didn't like what they found. Schopenhauer believed that this awakening was inevitable for anyone who thought deeply about life. Sooner or later, if we're honest with ourselves, we'll realize that everything that keeps us going is just a big distraction. And this is where the real dilemma arises, because after this awakening, there are only two options left: despair or renouncing desire. Despair is the path of those who, like Hemingway, Woolf, and Gödel, can't find a way forward. They see the game and refuse to continue playing. The renunciation of desire is the way out proposed by Schopenhauer. If life is suffering because we desire, then the only way out is to stop desiring. He was inspired by Buddhism, believing that the way to peace was to abandon the search for happiness and accept nothingness. But is that really the only solution? Or did Schopenhauer miss something? In the next act, we'll explore whether there is a third alternative, something that can transform suffering into something else, something that can change the way we look at life. Is this content making you reflect and sparking new ways of thinking? If so, click the super thanks button just below the video. It's a way to say thank you and help me bring more content like this to those who need to reflect on life. If you've made it this far, you already know the truth that Schopenhauer saw without filters. Life is suffering. Desire imprisons us. Nature doesn't care. And all the illusions that keep us alive will one day crumble. The question now is, what to do about it? Faced with this brutal revelation, Schopenhauer proposed a way out: the renunciation of desire. If wanting is the root of all suffering, then the only way to escape this cycle would be to give up wanting. Desire nothing, expect nothing, just accept. He was inspired by Buddhism, believing that the only path to peace was total detachment. But is that really the only option? Renunciation may bring relief to some, but for most people, simply giving up desires and accepting nothingness is impossible. Biology itself drives us to want. The human brain wasn't designed for absolute passivity. It searches for meaning, even in the midst of chaos. So, if we can't live without desiring, and if desiring condemns us to suffering, what's the alternative? Perhaps the answer is not to stop desiring, but to change the way we desire. Nietzsche, who came after Schopenhauer, saw the same grim reality, but refused to resign himself to it. He proposed a different path. If there is no meaning given by the universe, then we must create our own. If suffering is inevitable, then we must embrace it and use it as fuel to build something greater. The difference between Schopenhauer and Nietzsche is not in the diagnosis of reality. Both saw the world as an indifferent and cruel place. The difference lies in the response. While Schopenhauer said that the only way out was to retreat, Nietzsche said that the only way out was to move forward. And there are countless examples of people who have chosen to move forward. People who turned suffering into greatness. Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychiatrist imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp, saw hell up close. He lost his family, was tortured, and saw death every day. But instead of giving in to despair, he found a purpose: to survive in order to tell the truth and help others find meaning, even in pain. He wrote In Search of Meaning, one of the most impactful books in history, and helped thousands of people see that suffering can be bearable if we have a why to keep going. Stephen Hawking, diagnosed with a degenerative disease at the age of 21, gradually lost the movement of his body. Schopenhauer would have said that his life was nothing but a tragedy. But Hawking chose the path of Nietzsche. Even in a wheelchair, even without being able to speak, he defied his condition and revolutionized science. And we don't just have to look at the big names. Think of the people around you who have faced difficulties and moved on. Someone who lost everything and started again. Someone who was rejected, humiliated, defeated, but didn't give up. They didn't deny suffering, but they didn't allow it to define them either. Suffering is inevitable, but what we do with it, that's our choice. If Schopenhauer were right, the only alternative would be to accept nothingness. But perhaps he was wrong. Perhaps there is a third way: to use nothingness as a blank canvas. If the universe doesn't give us a meaning, that means we are free to create one. The truth is that there are no guarantees. You can fail, you can suffer, but you can also create something that has never existed before. You can make your own art, build your own story. Life doesn't need to have a universal meaning to be lived intensely and meaningfully. Emptiness will always be there. Suffering will always be part of the journey, but we can choose what to do with it. We can use this awareness to live more intensely, to free ourselves from false promises and embrace reality as it is. Not waiting for life to hand us something, but taking control of our own experience. And in the end, perhaps the only real choice we have is that: accept nothingness, or turn nothing into something. The decision is yours. If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You're subscribed to the channel, you watch the videos, you reflect on every idea. Now the question is, how far do you want to take this? If you want to take the next step and truly apply this knowledge to your life, the White Rabbit Codes is ready for you. The link is in the pinned comment. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the White Rabbit.